To understand SQL injection, let's first take a look at how the SQL statement is executed in the web system. Supposedly there's a web page called login.php, and it will receive a form from the user that contains the two fields. One is the email, the other is a password. And supposedly the two information has been posted to the login.php, and login.php will retrieve the two informations from the HTTP request and then to generate a SQL statement like this. And this SQL statement basically is saying that it will pick all the fields from the table users, and the table users is displayed here, and it will pick only the record whose email field equals to the email that is parsed from the web post, and the password is retrieved from the password field in the HTTP request. And in this concrete example, supposedly if user has provided the email as alice@example.com and the password as password alice, and it will assemble all the SQL statements and will generate the following SQL statement. Basically, it means that it will select the records from the user where the email is alice@example.com and password is password alice. And then this SQL statement is going to be executed by invoking the MySQL query statement, and it will look up the table and then to generate the data set assigned to the out. So when you see this user table here, and the database system is going to find all the records whose email is alice@example.com, the password is password alice, and it will identify the first record. So then the first record basically is going to be assigned to the out field. And then the next statement is going to tell like how many rows the out field contains. If the number of rows is greater than 0, then the PHP will print out a message saying login successful. Otherwise, the PHP will print out the message saying login failed. To better understand the SQL injection, let's take a look at the details of the PHP syntax. The trickiest part of this PHP statement is the first statement, which is to generate the query string. So we empty this first statement and put it here so that we can better discuss it. So we can see that the query string is generated by concatenating multiple substrings connected with the dot operator. So for each of the substring, it is wrapped with a single quote, and inside the single quote, it is a part of the SQL statement. So in this concrete example, the first part of the string is select star from user where email equals the double quote that is generating the first part of the SQL statement displayed in the below. And then the second component is gonna be the email string that is obtained from the post variable, and it basically is retrieved from the HTTP post request and will be put it to here. And the third component is gonna be another double quote so that we can notify the SQL engine that this email is gonna be a string. So notice that the double quote here that we represented in the PHP code is actually going to be used by the SQL engine, by the database engine. And then the fourth component is going to be and password equals and the double quote. Again, the double quote is here is used to indicating that the following variable is going to be the string that is used by the database engine. And then the fifth component is going to be the password obtained from the post request. And the last component is going to be another double quote that is wrapping up the password so that the database will be able to know that the password is going to be the string. So as you can see that the complicated PHP statement will eventually be able to generate the query string displayed as the following. Now let's take a look at how the SQL injection can be performed on this PHP. Again, the user only needs to provide the email and the password and then to reassemble this SQL statement. But the user can provide some strange strings. For example, he can provide the email as something like this and provide any strings and the password. So what will happen? As we said that the string that the user provided in the field of email is going to be used to replace the email field in the SQL statement, and the string that is provided in the field of password is going to be used to replace the password field in the SQL statement. So what will generate? So the SQL statement that is going to be generated will eventually looks like this. It's going to be select star from users where email equals, and as we said that this double quote is the double quote that's provided by the PHP code. And since the user providing the double quote and the first character of the email field, this double quote is going to be filled in and then followed with or 1 equals 1 and then semicolon and a double dash and followed with another double quote that is matching the first double quote and the password equals anything. So what will happen when this SQL statement being fed into the database? When database is receiving this, he will notice that there has a double dash appears in the SQL statement. The double dash in SQL statement meaning whatever string is following are all comments. So the database engine will simply skip all those substrings. So the database string will only process the substrings before the double dash. And then what does this SQL statement mean? Basically, this SQL statement means is that it's gonna select all the record from table users where the email equals an empty string or 1 equals 1. What does it mean? So 1 equals 1 will always be evaluated as true, and you will put or connecting with email equals empty string, meaning the code condition will always be evaluated as a true. So the database engine will apply this criteria on each of the records on the database and to see if the following condition will return true. Unfortunately, for each of the table record, the condition will always return true no matter what the data is contained in the data record. As a result, each data record is going to be selected. So as a result, when the SQL statement is executed, when the SQL statement is executed, the out variable is going to contain all the records. So when the next logic to be executed, where to return the number of rows. In this case, it's going to return 2 instead of 0. And then since the SQL number row is 2, which is greater than 0, and it will print out the message saying login successful. So as you can see that even though the attacker does not know anything about a valid email and a password, the whole SQL statement will be able to bypass the original checking logic and will allow the SQL injection happen.